I wish you bluebirds in the spring to hear your song, a song to sing, and then a kiss. More than this, I wish you love.
Welcome to the Forgiveness Solution Podcast. I'm Reverend Misty Time. You can find me at revmisty.com and on Sacred Stories Podcast. Please send me your forgiveness stories at revmisty@outlook.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Today, we're going to talk about real forgiveness in real marriage. Yep, you know, who needs to forgive their spouse? Has that ever happened? Sure it has. Well, we're going to talk to a real woman today in a real marriage, and we're going to talk about real forgiveness. Today, we're going to talk to Lisa Z. And Lisa has an amazing story, and I can't wait to get started. Lisa?
Hi.
Hi. Well, today, Lisa, who's a wife and a mother and an athlete, a triathlete actually, and she has a great story about forgiveness in her 19-year marriage. Her wonderful marriage to a fireman and a great man. But a real story about forgiveness. Lisa, can you enlighten us about this amazing marriage that you have with your husband?
Oh my goodness. Being married for 19 years, we've gone through a lot.
19 years will do that.
Yeah. We've gone through the birth of our beautiful little girl. We've gone through the ups and downs of just job changes and moving and just everything. And then lots and lots of stuff. It's exciting.
So a lot of life, right?
Lots of life.
Life,
just
water under the bridge.
Life.
Right.
Yep.
And then also your daughter was born hearing impaired, correct? Correct. So that's a whole nother struggle right there.
Yep.
Right. Well, also during your marriage, you guys went through a particular struggle, right? That you started early on when you noticed, correct?
Very early on, within the first couple months of marriage.
Wow. Can you tell me about that?
I remember the first couple months of marriage getting a phone bill at that time, this was so many years ago, the 1-800 phone numbers.
Oh, yeah.
And just getting a phone bill saying that number had been called, and I was absolutely in shock. I didn't do it. So I knew, obviously, my husband had
right.
made a phone call.
Right. And back then, before the internet, that kind of thing, that was when there were the live girl phone calls, right?
Yes.
And so that's, for anybody who's listening that's younger than us, that was, before the internet.
Back in the day.
And that's when they would dial and it would charge to your phone bill.
Yes.
Yeah, and that must have been a bit of a shock for you.
It was absolutely shocking.
Oh,
we just got married.
Oh, how heartbreaking that must have been for you.
Yes.
Yeah, and so what did that start in your heart?
At that time, I didn't really think that much of it. I was kind of in shock, but it wasn't. I was told it was the first time it's ever happened. It's just kind of one of those things.
Right.
And so I just sort of brushed it off and.
Right. And let's back up a little bit and talk about your courtship and your time together with your husband and the type of man you married.
I married an awesome man.
Mm-hmm.
Very, went to church. He had a very strong relationship with God and brought me closer. And our courtship, we were engaged. We met and were engaged for 9 months. And then we got married. So it was like 18 months altogether.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys had how old were you?
At that time, I was 23. He was 22 when we got married.
Right. So very common. We can probably all relate to falling in young love, and very upstanding guy. Probably pretty handsome, I'm guessing.
Extremely.
Very handsome. Well, you guys aren't sitting across from Lisa Z, but I'm telling you she's a beautiful woman, so probably even more beautiful at that young age. So probably a beautiful couple. And being a young couple and you discovering this probably set you off a little bit, probably got your tummy up a little upset, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 So then as the problem grew, because obviously it did, right?
It did. I found more magazines. If things were really hidden from me, but occasionally you would find something sort of on accident. Okay. But it was like years in between.
Years in between. And so then after your daughter was born, it was still going on.
It was still going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so obviously I'm going to ask you some pretty tough questions, and I'm feel free not to answer any of them, or tell me the story in your own words. When did you guys decide to maybe get a handle on this, or what was your discussions, and how did you, most importantly, because I talk about unforgiveness feelings, those ugly feelings that we pick up in a blink of an eye. It's natural to do that those hurt feelings, that pain, kind of smoldering resentment, and especially when we love someone, they really happen. Tell me about your feelings, and then more about the story of what you decided to do.
You can't see me right now, but I am nodding my head to all of this. There was a major ugly feelings. Many times the words divorce came out of my mind. Many times. And you need to get help for this. This is destroying our marriage. Many, many, many times. And it would seem as if it would stop, and it truly did, but it would start back up again. And I just remember just the absolute pain and anger, and almost to a point of just, gosh, I would hate to say it, but hate. I mean, just the feelings were so strong because I felt like it was getting chosen over me. And that was just a feeling that it's hard to even describe. I mean, it's very ugly. Beyond ugly.
Beyond ugly.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
We have, at that time we had a child who has a hearing loss, and just going through that and dealing with that, and just going through so many different feelings that finally one day I was doing triathlons, and I went and I worked out at one of the gyms, and I felt strong. And I was like, this is no more, not happening anymore. I'm done. I'm done feeling this way. I'm done feeling upset and those ugly feelings. And this is the last time it's going to happen. And at that time it had been, oh my goodness, 13, 14 years in.
Wow. Did anybody else besides you know? Did your family know? Did anybody else outside of your inside family know? I mean, besides your house
really.
know?
I mean, my house knew. My neighbors probably knew because they could probably hear through the walls, me being upset. And our child knew. But other than that, I think maybe my mom knew on like a really small scale, but it was one of those things that was so like embarrassing. Like an embarrassing secret.
And we haven't really talked about your husband. How did he feel?
He was extremely embarrassed by it. And it wasn't as if he didn't want me to say it. He didn't know how to stop it. It had just gotten to the point of, it was almost, goodness, how do I say it? It was just to the point of, you need to stop it, but how do you stop that.
And so up until that time you were in the gym and you felt powerful personally, up until that moment, what had you both done, him by himself or you together, to help with the situation?
I was really vigilant on at that time the internet was around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really vigilant about that. I don't even remember if there were smartphones at that time, but he definitely didn't have one. And I just remember going through and doing computer scans all the time. And it was almost as if I was like the police.
Yeah.
But not a position that I wanted to be in, and not a position I wanted to be in as a wife.
So besides this issue in your marriage, how was your marriage besides this situation?
It was great. Our marriage was great. He worked very hard for the family. It was a great marriage. Just the love that was there, and I would say the love. When the times were good, they were fabulous. They were awesome. They were the best marriage. And from the outside, it looked just like the perfect marriage. But on the inside, when I would catch him, and it was always by accident. It was never that I was out, I never really found anything. It was more by accident, and then he would admit, yes, I'm very sorry, and he would be extremely apologetic. It wasn't as if he was smug about it, or it was, I'm very, very, very sorry. Please forgive me. It's not going to happen again. And then it would. So from the outside, and I think this is very important for everybody who's listening, for you that's listening, for myself, to understand that we put on such a face for everyone, but we all have something. And I talk about blame and shame sometimes, right? Blame is what we put on other people, and shame is what we put on ourselves. So I hear a lot of blame and shame. So I hear your husband doing the shame and you're doing the blame. Even if it's rightful, like the rightful shame and blame game. But to everyone else, and even you're saying yourself, your marriage had such strong bonds, and it sounds like you had a strong faith also. Very, very strong faith, and it was one of those things where I just didn't understand. If we have such a strong faith, why is this a problem? Right. Did you question the God component a little bit there? Like, why God? Yeah, I would, and then it was almost as if every time it happened, God revealed it to me. And what was he revealing? He would... God revealing? Yeah, well, God would reveal, like, ask him. Ask him right now. Oh, I see. Ask him how he's doing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't me wanting to ask. I mean, I would rather stay in the dark. You know, I would rather, because that was a good time. When I would ask him, it was not a good time in our marriage. And so I would get this, just this feeling in my heart that would say, ask him right now. Ask him how he's doing. And I would ask him, and he would admit it to me. So Spirit was putting something on your soul. Spirit was putting something on my soul that said, you need to ask him right now. And I would, and then he would admit it, and then it would turn into really difficult, very angry, ugly feelings and shame, I would say, almost on both parts. Shame on my side were, am I not good enough? How am I not good enough? What am I not doing for this marriage? And then shame on his side, why can't I stop? Why am I doing this to her? just seeing, and then me blaming. And he never blamed me. He never said, you're not good enough. He never said, he never blamed me for any of it. But it was both of us feeling that shame. And it wasn't until that moment at the gym and realizing that it needed to stop today because I was not dealing with this anymore. And I'm a beautiful woman and I'm a strong woman, that this has to stop now.
And at that moment, what did you do about it?
At that moment, I said, you need to figure out how you're going to save this marriage because it's not going on that way. And I had done that before, and I would say this marriage is over, and then he would try and get help through some different programs, or he had somebody that he could call, and he would call that person, but then he wasn't necessarily honest with that person. And there was just a lot of getting help, but it wasn't really getting help, because you have to decide to make that decision. I am going to stop this. This is not going to rule over me. And it wasn't until that moment that things started to change.
All right, so things started to change, and that's the part where I want to have you share about how things changed, both those ugly emotions, we've talked about that from both sides, the pain that you both had, but also the deep love and the foundation of the deep love, but how things started to change, and also share what you guys did to get help, so that if somebody else is looking for those answers, and understanding that it took not just one time, not just two times, it took many times.
Many times.
Right, and sometimes definitely forgiveness has to come into that too, and to understand that we fall down and we get back up, and we fall down again and we get back up. But please share with us what you're most comfortable with about how that path went for you.
Well, we had gone to counseling probably a couple years before and thought we had solved the problem. And it's funny about forgiving. I had forgiven so many times, and it felt like I wasn't blindly forgiving.
That forgive and forget, you mean?
It was,
you didn't forget.
I didn't forget. I forgave, but I didn't forget, and so there was still that watchful. The trust wasn't quite the trust.
It's forgiving and trust are different things.
Very different things. So the trust level, it wasn't as if I forgave and just blindly walked through the rest of my marriage. It was, I forgave and, okay, there's still certain things in place. So we had a couple things in our toolbox already, but then we went to counseling. When I was absolutely done and said, this is it, this is the final straw, there is no more after this, a family member actually came over and spoke with him. And he actually did not realize how bad it made me feel. And I know that sounds really strange, but it was almost became blinded. I would say blinded, and did not realize how much pain that I was in, even though I was crying and there was this kind of pain, and he almost didn't realize the pain that it was in until that family member spoke to him, and he literally broke down. And it was I was so thankful that she talked to him about that and just broke it down for him. Just broke everything down. And it was as if I didn't have to tell him how much pain I was in. She did it. And I don't know how she got the words to say it, but she said exactly how I felt. And to have that family member do that and had no idea of what the struggle we had been through for 14 years, had no idea, was not involved in it, knew exactly what to say. And after that, he had called the counseling ministry at our church, and we were put into a ministry with the perfect counselors for us. And we also went to a completely different church. And actually, I need to go back a little bit. We were with the counselors already, and he was, I know this sounds terrible, in the counseling sessions, he was still not ready. He was not ready yet. And then the family member came over. Then we move on. And he actually went and got help at another church. And I went through the program. He went through the program.
And when you say the program?
It was a program that they did specifically on pornography.
Okay, so there's programs out there.
There are programs out there, yes. And I didn't know about it because it's one of those kind of secret sort of this.
So it's not as popular as AA, or because it seems like Alcoholics Anonymous, which is fabulous, and Narcotics Anonymous is pretty popular, but there's not as much publicity about Pornography Anonymous and that kind of thing.
Right. It's almost as if it's this shame that, you know, go in the back door, hide your face, whether you're the husband or the wife. And this was not like that. It was, everybody in here is dealing with the same thing. Everybody knows. And you walk in, and it was awesome because you have to work on yourself. I really had to work on myself because I thought it was because I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. I wasn't. And it wasn't that at all. It had started years before me, before I was ever even around. And it had nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. And I think that's what we don't see because we think, oh, well, it's my fault.
Right.
And it has nothing.
I agree with you. I think a lot of our things that we bring forward that other people are doing on their path, and I talk about people being on their own path, their own walk, their own journey, their own rapid ride. I tend to say rapid ride because journey sounds so much more pleasant and relaxing. That it's their path, their journey, and lots of times we get splashed in that. You know, we get the rubble of their journey, and that's when we realize that it's their stuff, but it affects us, right?
Yep.
But if we feel that we're the cause of it, or that we can also fix it, when really you nailed it, Lisa. You said that it had nothing to do with me. This came before me. This had something to do with their damage that they needed to work on, and you were correct. But in turn, it caused you stuff that you needed to work on.
Right.
Right?
Right. And so going through that program for myself, because you were separated, you were going through your own journey, or your own rapid ride.
Yeah, down that river.
And they were going through their rapid ride, and there were so many things in myself that was in my past about forgiveness that I needed to work on, and things in my past that I had gone through when I was younger, and not feeling not feeling great about myself from those things. And then this just kind of snowballed when it never had anything to do with me. My emotions were the result of, like you said, that splash.
That splash, exactly.
Yeah. And so once I realized that, and I realized in counseling and just knowing that how much pain he was in, and not realizing that was a painful and a shameful and just everything else. And here I am in this painful, shameful thing, and then putting back together just a marriage where it's amazing.
So let's talk about the rebuilding, the joy of rebuilding. How long was the program? Are you guys still in the program? How many years has that been?
We'll be married for 19 years coming up next month. I think it was at year 13 or 14.
Okay.
We were in the program, so it's been about 5 years. We were in the program for 6 months plus. I'm thinking more like 9 months maybe. And then we both decided that we were good.
Okay.
To not be in the program. Mind you, we were still doing counseling. We were still doing counseling every week. Things were not perfect even in the program because there was lots of ugly feelings, ugly emotions that came out on my side for sure. Lots of ugly emotions that came out, and so we definitely having that counseling, that safe place to go to, and they knew us and they knew what we needed. They knew how to build more tools in our toolbox. And so that's what we did for that.
I talk a lot about, in the forgiveness rapid ride, I talk about the preparing to forgive. Unforgiveness feelings happen many times in the blink of an eye. Though they are still a choice, they happen in a blink of an eye, and they're usually very valid to a reaction to a situation. But lots of times we need to prepare to forgive. And you hit the nail right on the head. You talked about counseling, tools in your toolbox, time. You talked about the time. Lots of time. And they coming back up, the ugly feelings that you kind of stuffed down. And Lisa, you really nailed that. The fact that you both needed to prepare. You talked about things in the past that it's like a big ball of ugly feelings mixed with past ugly feelings. And childhood, how do you unwind all that? Is that we do need counseling, whether it be spiritual counseling, whether it be mainstream counseling, talking to family and friends, and having those support systems. And I thank you for sharing that with people who are listening, because lots of times, and exactly what you said, is it's in the shadows that this kind of thing happens in marriages and to people, and it doesn't get brought out. That pornography can go to a place so unhealthy and so terrible to our souls. And I am so glad that you and your husband are in a place that's healthy and beautiful, and that beautiful marriage that you started out with is where you are now. And tell me about that beautiful marriage and what forgiveness has done for you.
Yeah, forgiveness. And like you said, forgiveness and forgetting. I still haven't. There are times when those ugly emotions do rear their head. I'm not going to lie. But we know how to work through it. We know how to calm that situation and go, and how do I say it? The building of the marriage is the marriage I would have always wanted. The marriage that I got after the 14 years is the marriage I would have always wanted from the beginning. And to see how beautiful it is, and to see how much he loves me And every single day, he comes home from work and there's this smile on his face, and his phone calls and his text messages, and just, we're free.
You're free.
Free. And that's what it is. It wasn't like that before. Yeah.
So the freedom is also come from the forgiveness he worked on also for himself, maybe?
Correct, yeah.
You think so?
The forgiveness of, the forgiveness of himself, the forgiveness of, goodness, I guess whatever, the snowball that he was dealing with, and the shame and that, and to know that the marriage is, oh my goodness. We do still have some, like I said, ugly feeling setbacks. But to see the beauty of the marriage, that, wow. I mean, I am so in love.
Well, I am so happy about all of it, and to hear the journey, the rapid journey, that the splashes of the journey, but the fact that you can look back and, first of all, how many people that you can help with this. And could you imagine that if you could have met somebody like yourself 14 years ago?
Yes, that had gone through it and had been willing to speak out. Yeah. Say, this is what I've gone through. There is a beautiful ending, but you have to go through the counseling. He has to realize there is definitely hard work. And going through that hard work together, and going through it also separate, because you've got some things there's some stuff you've got going on too. And going through that separate but together, and then finding out there truly can be this amazingness at the end. And I wish I would have started it back at, month 2. I only think about that. How would my life have been if this had happened month 2?
Well, you can't change. Well, you can't change your yesterday.
Right.
But, forgiveness gives you the chance to have a joyous tomorrow. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your journey, your rapid ride with everyone, and the chance to help others have a joyous tomorrow. And this has been Misty, Reverend Misty Time at the Forgiveness Solution podcast. Please send me your forgiveness stories so that we can share them. And please send me your questions, because I would love, love, love to answer some forgiveness questions and dig deep into forgiveness with you. And that's revmisty.com and revmisty@outlook.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Reverend Misty Time. Again, thank you, and please subscribe to the Forgiveness Solution podcast at Sacred Stories.
I wish you bluebirds in the spring to hear your song, a song to sing, and then a kiss. More than this, I wish you love.